Hello and welcome to episode 2 of It's All Trash, a podcast diving into the world of education. I am here today with my next guest, who is my mama. Hi, Mom.
Hi, baby.
How are you?
I'm a little nervous, but I'm okay.
Okay, you're going to do wonderful. We'll just pretend like we're FaceTiming and on the phone like we do every single day. It'll be the same.
Sometimes 2 or 3 times.
Exactly, depending on big moments, right? So I like I like to start the podcast off just like I started with our kids in the classroom, and we do a little check-in. So today I want to check in with a peak and a valley. So your peak is like something that's going really, really well, and your valley is something that is not so good. You can start with the valley first if you like, but how you feeling today?
Valley, I guess, is getting to the point where you get a letter in the mail from your doctor's office and you're afraid to open it because you don't know if it's going to be good news or bad news. So I plan like everything in my health life to happen in the months of March and April.
Mm-hmm.
And so but at this point, I start getting these letters and stuff like that. And it's always like, okay, did they forget to notify me and all that kind of stuff? So that's kind of
That's your valley
thing.
I thought that they would do electronic things now. Don't you know a little something about that?
Yes, I do. And they usually do. But then sometimes what happens is that you get a letter in the mail and you forget, where did I go for this one? Did I get this result? Or is it something that I had recently because I went to go see the doctor and they ordered something that I never had done before?
Mm-hmm.
So that was my valley, which I guess is not a horrible valley in as much as the news was good.
Right.
But for me, the valley is the realization when that kind of thing happens that, you're not a spring chicken anymore and you never know what kind of news you're going to hear.
Yeah.
I have multiple peaks.
Oh, that's good.
Because I am a person that likes to live my life with counting my blessings as they're happening. And so one of the peaks was that I had an evaluation at work, and I got a really good evaluation. And that always makes me feel good because I take a lot of pride in the work that I do. Another peak is doing this podcast with you because I get endless moments of pride from my children. Mm-hmm. And it makes me happy, although I'm extremely nervous about this kind of thing. I am also extremely proud.
Good.
The last one is that in April, my husband and I, your daddy and I, celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. And then, but we celebrated it with you guys in Puerto Rico. And that was just, that's a highlight.
Yeah.
And so that made me very, very happy.
Yeah, that was cool. That was a good time. So let me see, my peak and my valley. It's funny to do peaks and valleys that are personal when the world is a little bit crazy. And when we get into like the current event stuff, we'll talk about a little bit of that. So like obviously the valleys have to do with current events too. But my peak is like, this sounds so dumb, but I made an apple pie last night and I was like really excited about it. And also Emma's sister's boyfriend gave us like a bunch of food from restaurants and things, and so we've been having really good, nice, rich food in the house, and so I've been feeling really good like eating all this great stuff. But then today my stomach is like killing me because I've been eating all of this really rich, good food stuff, having these like giant cookie, like you remember how we would go to Lou Malnati's and they had those cookies and they put the ice cream on top? I replicated that at home, and then yesterday I had apple pie with the ice cream on top. It's just not well. So my like this morning, even when you called me, I was laying in bed because I was like, I just like my stomach hurts so bad. So my walk felt better. I'm feeling okay now. So blessed to have some really good food, but also my valley is just like remembering, ma'am, you are lactose intolerant. So let's act like it.
Yeah. Lactate makes a good lactose intolerant ice cream, just FYI.
I tried to get the vegan ice creams too, but they just don't taste the same. And I'm like, oh, well, if I don't eat it that much, it's not that big of a deal. But then when I do eat it,
you're right.
It's annoying. Yeah. All right. So let's get into some current events. You ready? Your opinion is going to matter, especially on this first one.
Okay.
So the first one I want to talk about is something I released online, which isn't a current event to the world, but it's current to us in our life, which is the end of the Educated Latina merch. So I shared on my blog that I had all these, really conflicting feelings about being super appreciative of the shirt and the term and the journey and like understanding where it took me and the beautiful things it brought to my life and the life of others, the way that so many folks are able to wear it with pride, but also understanding that like as language changes, we can acknowledge that some folks felt othered by it. Some saw it and it didn't matter their education level and they were like, or their formal education level, and they would say, I'm an educated Latina, that's right, like I can do whatever I want. And then there were other people who were like, well, I didn't get to go to school, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And so they would feel a type of way. And I was just like, after all these years, it's really served its purpose. It did a fantastic job of embracing a community of people. It gave me talking points to say to younger Latinas, like, yeah, look, I met this person who does this career. I did that. Look, there's so many really amazing things. But I felt like it was time for it to rest. But we had that conversation and you were like, oh, I don't know. And you kind of felt sad about it. What were your feelings about Educated Latina resting?
Well, for me, I liked the initial message of it. I liked how you had the Old English letters and I know who the intended audience was. I know what the purpose was. Right. I understood. I was there with you through that journey from the beginning. So I absolutely understood it. And I felt, and maybe it was because of the place that we were living at in LA where we were just experiencing that crap on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
That I felt like it was something that they needed to see, they needed to hear, and I was sick and tired of, how I was being treated.
Yeah.
And not just me, but your sibling, how the thing was. And so I liked it. And also being in LA at that time, when we were going to the Molcajetes and the people there were just embracing it. Yep. They loved it.
Yeah.
For me, part of it was nostalgia because it's how it all began. But the other part of it is that I feel that for my generation, your generation, not as much, and the younger generation, even less, but for my generation, we have grown up with having to really kick and scratch and pull hair to get to the places that we needed to get to. And then when we got there, it was always like, if you came up with a good idea, everybody was like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Yeah. Like I couldn't come up with good ideas. Right. Like they didn't expect that of me. And so I felt that for me, the people who the intended audience were are the people who I found myself in rooms with throughout my entire career. Yeah. For me, I'm not ready for that to end. But on the other hand, I understand that because I kicked and pulled and scratched and made my way to where I am, maybe the voice doesn't need to be so loud. Yeah. Maybe now we don't need to speak to them. We need to speak to each other. We need to figure out a language that can work for everyone.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And that was something, I don't know if I addressed this in the letter, but like kind of talking about the tweets that some of the, like I would see Gen Z kids posting about the term and not liking it. What I think a lot of those tweets were missing is that the intended audience wasn't necessarily Latinas who didn't have a formal education. It was the people who disregarded us. And so then we're also making this statement, though, that is kind of like a statement that's towards white supremacy and these ideals and the racism and the bias and all of that. And then my brain goes to, do I want to create products that speak to that, or do I want to have internal conversations within our group? And so I'm on the same lines as you, where I'm like, yeah, it served such a fantastic purpose, and all the stuff that was going on in LA, oh my God, the way that the life out there just kind of opened my eyes to some really horrible treatment of Latinos. Like, I had never seen such a divide in my life. I had never seen such abuse. And so, yeah, that definitely fueled into it. And perhaps me being disconnected and being back in Chicago, I don't see it as much. I could admit to that as well. But yeah, there's definitely a space for us to have some internal conversations, I think.
Can we also say, though, that the fact that people were taking it that way just highlights that it has been ingrained in us that we are each other's competition. Instead of being able to lift each other up, we have to say, well, she's wearing that educated Latina shirt and I didn't go to college, so she thinks she's better than me.
Right. Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And I remember having conversations with people when they were purchasing, when I would work the stand, and I would say, you got a promotion at work, you got on the job training, you went to trade school, you're an educated Latina.
Yeah.
You know, you're a stay-at-home mom and you read your kids at night. You're an educated Latina. You have taken steps to make your life better and the lives of others around you better. You're an educated Latina. But the fact that it needed an explanation for the younger generation, I understand the momentum at this point.
Yeah, I'm glad. And see, this is why I am the way I am, because you're a brilliant lady who is, you are such a part of this journey, and obviously you do so much in the shop with me, and I discuss all of these things with you, and I think we come at it from different perspectives and age groups and stuff, and which kind of goes into the next topic, Ed Week, which is an education publication that I know you're not super familiar with, but they put out a report that college enrollments have been declining. And I found that really interesting because, lots of folks can say, due to the pandemic, people didn't want to go in person or just different shifts in society. But the publication was saying that they expected enrollments to rise back up, and they haven't, because there's so much conversation about the cost of college, and then the idea that folks are not going to necessarily make more money with a college degree. What do you think about that? We've had this conversation a lot.
We have. I think you've gone on to get levels of education that I have never obtained. And I know that comes with a lot of debt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that everybody saying all the time that college is the answer is the wrong thing, because there are so many things that you can do that you don't necessarily need to go to college. Like, for example, I went to college and I got the most basic kind of college, I got an associate degree because for me, school like that, it's just not something that I actively wanted to pursue. I've had opportunities throughout life. I don't knock people who do it at all, obviously, but that's not the path for me. But I think that there's a lot of people that are like me. And then you're telling people like me, if you don't go to college, you will not be successful. And then they try to go to college and either they don't make it because it's really not for them, or they make it and they're making, slightly above minimum wage. And then they have these huge loans and they're like, why did I even go to school? I don't even like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to stop acting like trade schools are not acceptable forms of higher learning.
Yep.
And I think that there needs to be more programs to get... Now, here's the other thing. I hate when people push people to trade school because they assume you can't go to college because you look a kind of way. That pisses me off.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. But if I had been able to, at some point, if trade school would have been offered to me as an opportunity, I probably would have gone to trade school. Although I don't regret in any way, shape, or form the path that my career has taken me in. But I think that would have been a good option for me.
Yeah.
And I know other people like that. I also think that if you want more people to go to college, then you have to figure out a way to make it more accessible to people who would benefit from college, who do want to go to college, but just cannot afford it. I think it's ridiculous to expect somebody who's going into public health, public education, some kind of a career that doesn't pay well, to pay the same amount of tuition as somebody who is graduating from that school with a business degree or a degree in engineering. If I'm going into public health, I'm going to get my master's degree in public health, and I'm going to come out with debts of $75,000, $80,000 if I'm lucky.
Right.
That's it.
Yep.
And I'm going to be making $40,000 a year. I mean, I don't know what the salary is, but I know it's not a lot.
Yeah.
But if you graduate as an engineer, you're going to make over six figures right off the bat.
Yep.
How is that fair?
Right. It's so funny because you're actually saying the same thing as the ed secretary, Miguel Cardona. He went to a trade school. He graduated from a technical high school, which of course was also what Lane was supposed to be.
Right.
But by the time I graduated, it was not. But he said that we need to incorporate more tech programs. There needs to be more CTE. There needs to be more college things in high school. I think the problem that our society has done is instead of promoting careers, they've promoted college. And college is not a career unless you're an academic. For me, going to college and going to get my master's was intentional to my career because it's in the field of education. But if I wanted to have a career in something else, that might not have necessarily, it would have been a stupid choice. It still kind of is a stupid choice because I don't make a lot of money, but I'm very knowledgeable within my career, right? So that's the conversation that needs to have, which kind of connects to the educated Latina stuff. Like I was trying to show folks that there are different careers. I remember going to college at UIC. One of my first classes was an anthropology class. And I was like, people do this for a living? Like you make money studying other people? It blew my mind. And the more I would learn about other jobs, because, you know, we'll kind of talk about this in a moment, you were the only person I knew who had what I considered a career, because you were working in nursing. Everybody else had good jobs or jobs of some sort, hard workers. Like Dad was always a hard worker to me, but I knew he never felt satisfied with what he was doing. I knew he never felt like he was in a career. And that's what I saw from a lot of other people. So then learning these other careers and jobs that people had just like completely blew my mind. It just felt, it almost felt the same as like a rich person who could just play all day. Like, oh, you had the privilege to just like do this thing that makes you happy. That's insane. You know, we'll see how this ends up flowing. I do think the pandemic has something to do with it. I hope that schools start to change their trajectory and their conversation around college and change it more to careers and really understanding like, and also that you can change careers, right? Like you started off in nursing and now you work in informatics. You know, I started off at teaching because I thought that's the only thing you could do when you like working with kids. And now I'm working in curriculum development, which I had no idea people did. Like someone has to create the materials and I didn't know that was a job. Now, obviously I do.
So I don't work in informatics. I work in information technology.
My bad.
Yeah, no, it's okay because my first job in this field, it wasn't informatics because I was doing both things and was actively using my nursing to, you know, with the workflows and stuff. But in this one, I am literally an application analyst.
Okay, stand corrected. But you know I listen because the word informatics means zero to me.
Means you haven't listened in at least 5 years, though.
Okay, well, all right. So the next thing, current event, which obviously is a steep turn, but just the shooting that happened in Texas. I believe it's reported that at this point there's either 19 or 20 some odd kids and 2 teachers who were killed, and things are unraveling every day about this. There's almost this opportunity for information overload with it. I've had to shut down quite a few times, which is why I don't know the exact number, because this stuff is very hard to even hear, and there's a point of helplessness when you hear about it too, you know. Have you read anything really about it?
I have not.
Yeah.
I have actively avoided reading, watching, researching anything because I do have a tendency to obsess, and I can't let my head go there.
Yeah.
I can't let my soul go there. So I do know the general, and you know, my heart bleeds for everybody that was involved. I believe that the last that I had heard was 19 children and two teachers, and I think you know, the way I feel that was 21 children because the teachers are somebody's children.
Yeah.
And I remember there being a school shooting when you were working at a school on the south side of Chicago, and I believe there was a shooting when school was letting out.
Yeah.
And you're the one who told me, so I knew you were okay.
Yeah.
But I remember panicking about it and panicking every single day about you being there, and it's too much. I don't know anything about the shooter. I don't want to know anything about the shooter because I don't want this shooter's name to be ingrained in my memory. I hate that happens, that they become famous after they've done something like this. Yeah. And then they get killed, they become martyrs for the cause. and so I don't want to have any part of that, with them. I feel that there's a lot of issues that are going on in this country that have been going on for a very long time. Obviously, the sheer number of assault weapons that there are in this country. And then there's issues with mental health. I can't remember the exact statistic, but I remember reading something. This was many years ago, so I know it's even worse now. But that the number of inpatient psychiatric beds had gone down like something from 90%.
Wow.
From when Ronald Reagan was president to present day. And so what you end up finding is that access to mental health services are diminishing. And so you do see a lot of people that are homeless that are dealing with mental health. There is no place for them to go, literally. There is no funding to try and help people with that kind of situation. Not saying that that's the issue with this kid. I don't know. I did hear that he waited until the day after his 18th birthday to go buy the assault weapon. A day after you turn 18, that's a magical point where all of a sudden the system determines that you're smart enough and you have the emotional intelligence to manage a weapon of mass destruction. Yeah. That blows my mind. Yeah. But then again, if you're at 18 and there's a war and they decide to put the draft in, you're old enough to go to war.
Yeah. There's also the connection that he killed his grandmother before going over there. Yeah. And there's been conversation about how so many of these mass shooters have these emotions towards women in some sort of way. There's some sort of femicide that also accompanies these mass shootings. And there's some crazy things that are going on within the patriarchy with that, and then there's the access to guns in general. Everywhere that I've taught has been high crime neighborhoods. Every single place that I've taught. When I was teaching where you're talking about, I was in a neighborhood that was the border of Back of the Yards in Inglewood. And at the time, Inglewood was like what they called the murder capital of the world. There was multiple shootings that happened over there. One was on the school grounds. A gun was there and a kid picked it up. And then there was the other one that was at the park down the block and 13 people were shot, including like a 3-year-old. And at that time, conversation about guns and shooting were I was teaching 3rd and 4th grade, and the kids were talking about how we're at the 3rd floor, and so it's less likely for us to get shot up here. Really having that conversation at that grade just really broke my heart. One day they were talking about, where do you hide in your house when you hear gunshots? Or how they want to live in the woods. Not because they want nature or not they want this, because they don't want to be shot. And those conversations are so sad that is literally a part of everyday life for kids, There's just too much access to all of these things. They're not a necessity in the way that it's being projected. They're extremely dangerous, and those are the things that really break my heart. I also kind of put up a wall because last year, when there were some kind of things that happened around the same time. One of them was a 7-year-old from my school who was shot and killed. I think you remember that her dad was actually the target. And around the same time was when Adam Toledo was shot by the police as well. So the way that those things hit me, because they were such young kids, and the closeness of it being a kid that was at my school. I mean, I was teaching 7th grade, so I didn't teach her, but just this thing, knowing that her class was coming in and the conversations that they were going to have about violence and, your classmate's not coming back because she was shot over the weekend. It crushed me in such a way that I couldn't even have the conversation about this shooting here. It triggers you back to practicing your drills. It triggers you back to having conversation with kids when they're, kids are loud, they're noisy. You're doing active shooter drills with 7th graders, and there's always some kid who's, being a kid, being noisy, being loud, and you're like trying to convey the severity of the situation. But what is running through your head now is, if you acted like this when there was a real shooter in here, you're putting all of our lives in danger. And now you have to tell the kid these things, and then, it's like, I don't want to scare you, and I'm not trying to freak you out, but at the same time, this is the reality of the situation. If you were acting like this, we can all die. We had shades in my classroom. My middle school was on the 1st floor, shades that wouldn't go down. They were taped up, and then, so if something happens, what are you supposed to do? Part of the strategy is closing the window, is putting the shades down. If my shade's broken, what am I supposed to do? If my door doesn't lock, what am I supposed to do? So all of these really horrible things start going through your mind, and it's happened so much. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I watched a video of Beto O'Rourke yelling at the people, and I'm like, you go do that, go rally all your other politicians. That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. I'm obviously outraged and angry, and most teachers agree. Like, they have this conversation about teachers being armed. For what? For what? No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And most teachers don't want it. They've had these surveys of they don't want it. We don't, that's not the answer.
I think there's besides the gun control, besides the issues with mental health, there's a lot, or bigger sociological reasons for this kind of thing to happen.
Yeah.
There's too much of an issue here in this country with the haves and the have-nots. And there's also, like, let them kill each other, we don't care kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that. And then it's also, even how society has had us, and this is just because of the nature of the beast in this country, where if somebody tells you to picture a gangbanger, drug addict, you always picture a person of color, and depending on where you are, you will picture a specific color.
Yeah.
And so we are, again, knocking each other down instead of boosting each other up. Right. As minorities, we are a large number if we unite. But
we're the global majority. That's why I hate that term, minority.
Yeah, I know. And I remember when Barack Obama was elected president, that I heard one of the political commentators say, we have finally elected in this country a person who looks like the majority of the world.
Yeah, he does.
And it blew my mind, because I've lived in the United States and I've been told that I am a second-class citizen since the day I was born. Yeah. So it totally blew my mind. But we are encouraged to not connect as a group.
Yeah. Because
if you put the brown here and the black here, and every other class separate, and then all white people are together, of course they're going to be the majority. Right. In that way, right. And that's how it's been just ingrained into this society.
Absolutely.
For sure. We could go on forever. We could have like a separate podcast just on that.
Just about that, right? Yeah. And so I didn't want to get too much into the conversation about it, because every talking head is talking about it. I want to see some action from politicians. I want it to stop. It breaks my heart. And yeah, that's where I am on that. Are you ready to get into a little bit of conversation about you? Is that yes?
Sure.
Okay. So you said, why am I doing this? And it's one of those examples of a person that the world around and me and everybody sees how amazing, and I hate to put you on a pedestal, even though I knock you down sometimes because you are my mother, but you are such a phenomenal human, and your journey has been so wild, almost to the detriment, the opposite way, where I remember having this conversation with Dad recently, where I was like, Mom seemed like such an anomaly that I did not think that I could be as successful as her, because I thought you were just like doing things that were superhuman. That's how it came across to me. So I thought I was going to be regular like everybody else. Or I would hear you talk about luck, and then I would get mad because I'm like, how dare she talk about luck? This is not luck. This is hard work, but obviously there is a little bit of that. We've talked about that. So you being a teen mom, a very young Latina, at this point, I consider you very successful in your career. You have you have an associate's degree, and which is unheard of to be as successful in your career for a lot of folks. And so those are just a multitude of reasons why I want to talk to you. You talk about having all of these government programs that you were a part of, that you took advantage of in such a positive way. And I think that it's good to have those conversations. So yeah, does that make sense? Do you feel like, now I deserve a space with this conversation?
I'm willing to go forward with the conversation.
Not that you deserve a platform. You deserve a platform.
Okay,
You deserve all the awards. And don't be shy. Don't be coy about it. So talk to me about your education and journey in general. In our pre-show thing, you wrote about how like education was always important to you, but you couldn't necessarily afford it. And then obviously having a child, even though I'm the most wonderful, fantastic gift on this planet, put a little kink in your plans, right?
Yes,
So
it
talk
did.
about that. Talk about that, mama.
So when I was gonna go to high school, I was getting in trouble a lot when I was in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And so my parents decided that I needed to go to an all-girl school.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I learned hard work because my dad, he worked overtime for 4 years to pay my tuition. I remember not seeing him so much during that time. But I graduated from high school. And then shortly thereafter, I met your dad. But I had already enrolled at UIC.
Mm-hmm.
And I got pregnant. But at the same time, I realized that UIC was not for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the first time I walked into one of those lecture halls and there was like 400 people there.
Yeah.
I wanted to cry.
Mm-hmm.
Because I came from a small high school. You know, if you had a question, you just raised your hand and asked a teacher.
Right.
It was crazy. So I went there for only, at that time they were at quarters, I think. So I went there 1 quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped going. And I had you.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. And I remember going to this in-service, to this trade school. I can't remember what it was called. It was to learn how to work on computers back then. But they were not paying well, and I couldn't get assistance to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then your grandmother, who was also a nurse, was telling you, you need to do something with your life. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, it'd be nice to be a nurse, but, I can't go to school for 4 years. And she goes, you don't need to go to school for 4 years. And got me all of this information from Truman College so that I could go to their 2-year nursing program.
And did Grandma do 2 years or 4 years?
She did do 2 years, but she went to Lake County.
Okay.
So at the time, I was on public aid.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a little bit of cash, I had a little bit of food stamps, and I had a medical card. And I had a really great caseworker. And I would go see her like you had to do back then. I don't know. It was like once a month I had to go see her. And we'd get a status and I had to bring you in. And she would always say to me, you're so smart. You're so smart.
Mm-hmm.
So then after I got the information from your grandma, I went to her and I said, my mother-in-law was telling me about this program at Truman College. It's a 2-year program, but I can't even afford the tuition. And she goes, well, we have this project that is mandatory when your child turns 5, but you can volunteer for it before if that's what you want to do. So I said, yeah. So it was called Project Chance. What they did was that they paid for childcare for you. They gave me bus fare tokens, because that's how we used to pay for the bus back then.
Mm-hmm.
They helped me apply for Pell Grants to pay for my tuition.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gave me vouchers for books, supplies, and uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking some prerequisite classes at Wright College when you were about a year old, maybe. And then I got into the actual nursing program because I was only taking part-time classes at Wright College. And then I transferred my credits to Truman College so that I could be, closer to the program. And I started taking the classes there. And then I got accepted to the nursing program. Mm-hmm. And when I needed the uniforms, the Project Chance voucher paid for everything, even right down to my shoes.
Wow.
When I was in nursing school, I remember my mother-in-law, your grandma, gave me a stethoscope for Christmas. And she goes, you can't back out now. Now, that thing is so old and crusty that it does not work at all, but I still have it.
Aw, that's special.
It's special because, at that point, really, I did not want to let her down.
Yeah.
It was a struggle. It was hard because I didn't have a car, and so I would take you on the stroller 5 blocks to the babysitter's house, even over snow and ice and everything, drop you off there. Then I would get on the Fullerton bus, and then I would go to school.
And this is not about him. What was Dad doing at the time? Because I also know he would take me to, I have memories of dad taking me to daycare, and I know that he, we've talked about him being fired from work because he was late because he had to take, like, all of that stuff. So was he just finding his sea legs because he was younger than you. He was
Yeah.
18 and you were 17. He was still doing school too, right?
Yeah, so he was working.
Okay.
And I was going to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was very hard for me. I couldn't really hold down like a full-time job or even a part-time job. It was really, really hard trying to go to school all day full-time, take care of you. And then I had clinicals. So I had to be in the hospital at 7 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock. That's when he was getting in trouble for going late to work because he had to drop you off on those days at the child care.
Yeah.
And then the last year that I was in nursing school, we had help from the grandparents.
Okay. When was it that I was at the daycare at the school? Because I remember that.
Yeah, that was my second semester and my third semester of nursing school. Okay. So those 2, you were there, which was super convenient for me because I could drop you off. But then at that point, I had clinicals 2 times a week. This was where we wrapped up everybody. So I would drop you off at my mom's house in the morning. Mm-hmm. And then my mom would drop you off at my friend's house. Mm-hmm. And then my friend would take you with her to school and drop you off there. And I was able to pick you up after school because of the time that I got out of my clinicals.
Right. It's
really like the whole it takes a village kind of thing.
Yeah.
If I wouldn't have been able to figure out how to get you there because I had to be at the hospital at 7 in the morning and the daycare didn't open until 8.
Yeah. So what did it feel like to finally graduate and be able to get a full-time job?
Well, here's the thing. When I graduated from nursing school, I could not find a full-time job. Oh. Believe it or not, at the time that I graduated from nursing school, there was considered to be a surplus of nursing.
It's the opposite now, right?
Oh, yeah. It was the opposite then. What they were trying to do was they were really stretching every nurse out to as far as they could go. And it was horrible. Mm-hmm. But I found a job through an agency working at West Town Clinic. Mm-hmm. But the thing was that I remember 2 things distinctly from when I graduated from nursing. Mm-hmm. One was that at the time I wore glasses and I had always worn these ugly glasses because I was on public aid. Mm-hmm. And I went and I spent $400 on a pair of glasses.
Oh, okay. That's a lot even now. I would not want to spend that much on glasses now.
I didn't have any kind of insurance and I just wanted to splurge. Mm-hmm. So I spent $400 on a pair of glasses. Mm-hmm. No, I would not spend $400 today. But back then, yes. That was my one and only lujo. Mm-hmm. And the second one was going to my caseworker when I had my follow-up because I brought her my check stub. And she looked at it and she goes, "This case is closed. Congratulations."
That's a big moment.
It was a huge moment for me. But you know what else that Project Chance did that is amazing? They gave me 3 months of food stamps and 1 year of the medical card to help me get on my feet.
Even after you finished the program?
After I finished the program. No more cash. Wow. 3 months of food stamps and 1 year of the medical card, which was good because I had to get a job with an agency and I didn't have health insurance. Mm-hmm. And I had a small child. You were 4 years old at the time. So that was very, very helpful for me. Mm-hmm. But the first time that I put on my uniform and went to work at the clinic, I was so super proud of myself. And I was like, I'm going to go work in Humboldt Park. This is what I'm meant to do. And man, that was hard. The first day that I worked there, I got a cramp on my tongue from rolling my R's because I hadn't... Because I hadn't spoken that much Spanish in so long, Mm-hmm. But it was because, there really were no other nurses there that looked like me. Mm-hmm. And every patient in that clinic, except for maybe a handful, looked like me. Yeah. And so they saw me and they were like, "Nena, una pregunta. Nena, ven acá. Nena, ¿cuánto tiempo? Nena, ¿dónde está el doctor?" So that was my day, and I'm talking to them, and I'm triaging, and I'm trying to, I know Spanish, but I didn't know medical Spanish. Mm-hmm. But I learned that really quick, or I not learned it, I remembered a lot of the things because when you're speaking the language, you know the words. It's just that I hadn't dug that deep in so long. Right. And then from there, I met somebody who was impressed with me, and she was part of the HR at Norwegian. Mm-hmm. She said, you should apply. I think there's a position opening up. And so she recommended me, and I was able to get a full-time job.
Now, you went through a super long journey of nursing, and we don't have to go through all of that, but I do want to talk about the point where you went from nursing and you got into management as well. Like what you just shared, I think is really your story, where you were in a place and people were impressed with you, and then you were in a place and, you know, it kept advancing like that. But there was a point where you moved from nursing to nursing management, right? And then from that, you moved into kind of the field that you work in now, which is like tech. You know, you're basically in the tech field. So kind of sum up what that journey was and what you do now.
So one of the beautiful things about nursing, and this is why I would recommend the profession to anyone who is interested in a medical career, is that nursing is a great stepping stone for you to find your passion. I love taking care of people. I loved working in my community, and I loved working in general in the Latino community. But I didn't necessarily want to be a hospital nurse. And so I was able to try different fields of nursing until I found the one that worked for me. And so that's why I'm saying that it's a great place. Nursing is not just about working in the hospital.
Yeah, I was just about to say, similar to what we talked about with teaching, where I think I want to work with kids, I have to be a teacher. With nursing, people think if I want to be a nurse, I have to work in a hospital, but that's not necessarily the case.
Correct. So I work in hospitals, and I've worked in clinics. There's even nurses that work in schools. You know, there's nurses that work in various areas. And so you can find your passion through nursing. So I use that as an opportunity to learn and grow. So I went from being a floor nurse to working in a clinic when we first moved to Oceanside, California. In that role, I was hired on as a supervisor because I was going to be the only nurse in the clinic, and everybody else was medical assistants. So I was not trained for that, but again, you know, had somebody who interviewed me and felt that I was capable of doing the job, and I was bilingual, which was essential in Oceanside. So I learned a lot from Dr. Calhoun. She's a great mentor. To this day, I respect her wholeheartedly. She is a woman of color and very proud of it, and a very strong woman. So I believe that a lot of where I am today is due to Dr. Calhoun her believing in me.
We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
She even took me on, and I did little jobs with her.
Yeah, absolutely. She's a great mentor. So then we came back to Chicago, and I decided to continue on with the role of being a supervisor. So I took that on, and I was the nurse manager there for a lot of years, and I learned a lot, and I did a lot. I met a lot of people. I did a lot of interesting things. At a certain point, I just felt that I had grown as much as I was going to grow in that position. Yeah. And I had to decide if I wanted to grow any more in nursing or if I wanted to pursue something differently. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes when you ask the right question, the universe will answer you. Yep. And at a certain point, our system was going to be converting from paper charts to electronic medical records. I volunteered to be part of the user group. That's what they call us, you know, the subject matter experts, or SMEs. So I volunteered. I went to every training session. I was part of every decision-making process that they had as far as workflow and functionality. Yeah. I loved it. It was so obvious that I was into it that they actually got me access to the system so that I can kind of deep dive on my own. Okay. And I was learning a lot. And then the project manager just kept on talking. She's like, oh, you seem to really get a hang of this. You know, you really seem to understand it. And I was like, yeah, I find it so fascinating. She's would you ever consider switching over? Because
this hold on, I think you're not providing the context. What you're saying, this is the process of taking all of your paper medical records and converting it to digital medical records, right? Correct. And so you're learning that background process of doing the conversion, but also how everybody's going to work the system in the future.
Right. Because you have to build the system. And so, you know, when you have a medical record, you open it up, the paper chart, you open it up, and you're going to have tabs here. Yeah. Okay. Well, how do you translate this to this? Right. You know, translate lifting the paper to clicking on your mouse. Yeah. That's all process. And it's things that the system already has in place, but you get to organize it in a manner that flows. That's what we call workflow. So it's how it flows for the clinic. How is it going to flow from the front desk Or even from before, when the patient makes an appointment, does the patient call to make the appointment?
Yeah.
Or does the patient make the appointment online? The patient comes to the system. How do you check their insurance? Do they do it online? Do you do it here? Do you do it beforehand? And you collect their copay? Then how do you let the back know that the patient is here? How does the doctor know that the patient is ready? How does the lab know that the patient needs to have blood work?
And those were things that all used to be phone calls or messages and paper trails. And now it's...
The patient walking around with a sheet of paper and you see them and you're like, okay, that's a pink one. You're going to the lab. Go over here. It's a white one. You're going to x-ray. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's how do you do all of that and not have the paper?
Right.
And so that's a huge transition for people. It is scary for people.
Yeah.
It was not scary for me.
It was exciting for you.
It was exciting for me. And I'm coming from a clinic that at the point that I left, we were seeing 30,000 patients a year.
Wow.
We had 30,000 encounters a year. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yes.
And so we had like rows and rows and rows and rows of charts.
Okay.
So
I remember seeing them in the back when I would come and visit.
It.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of paper all over the place, and so we were converting, and I was really excited about it. But like I told you, rewind how many years I was looking into computer school.
Right, you had
then.
always been with it. Yeah.
So it was something. So it was something that I was always interested in, and now I had the opportunity to do it.
Right.
So like I said, I was at the point where I was like, I don't feel like I'm going to grow that much more. I don't want to be a director. I don't want to be anything else. I don't want to move up in nursing anymore. What can I do? And this beautiful position became available of a nursing informaticist / analyst at the same system that I was in. I asked for a transfer. And I went through the whole interview process. There was negotiating for money. This is a space where I could talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, so what happened was that, at that point I was a nursing manager. I had already been with the organization for 10 years. I had always gotten really good evaluations. So I was getting good increases throughout all of my years. And, the max at that point would be like 3%. But 3%, and I shouldn't say at that point because it's literally like that nowadays.
Right.
But so it was 3%, but I was getting that because I always gave my all, no matter what. So I did a great job. I know that. I'm going to toot my own horn.
Good.
I know I did a great job.
Good.
So when I went to go transfer, at that time, the starting pay for the position that I was applying for was 15% lower than what I was making as a nurse manager. And I refused.
Yeah.
The director said, well, you're not going to be working as a nurse. That's how he tried to tell me. And I said, I know, and that the only reason that I am sitting in this chair right now is because I'm a nurse. Because I have no experience in informatics. I have no experience in computers. So you are going to be using all of the experience that I have as a nurse, all of the experience that I have in the hospital system. And I refuse to discount the last 5 years of raises that I've gotten for doing an excellent job to take this position. So he said, well, we'll see what we could do. Well, he had to send it through HR. Well, it just so happened that the vice president of human resources was a patient at my clinic. Okay. Now, she would come in and see me checking her in and see my tag that it said manager, see me checking her in, see me giving her injection, me drawing her blood, and then me checking her out because I was running around and covering everybody. If somebody needed lunch, I was there covering it.
Yeah.
She said to me one time, you're wearing a lot of hats here. And I said, well, yeah, it's good for me to stay on top of whatever, like knowing that everybody knows that I can do what they can do so that when I tell them I feel like you can do this,
you have the experience.
I've tried it.
Right. Yeah.
And she says, yeah, but sometimes too much is too much. This is the vice president of human resources.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't think twice about it. It was just my life. But when the paperwork made its way, it finally got to her desk and she signed for me to keep my 15% pay.
Wow.
Because she knew the ethic, the work ethic that I brought in. Plus, she knew that I was of value to the system and she didn't want to lose me. And so I was able to slide over to with the same salary.
Yeah, I was going to say something that your experience has taught me, or like just watching you, maybe from these conversations that we've had across my life too, like you're always interviewing. Like you are always putting your, not you specifically, but like as people, we always are taking different opportunities to show what we know and what we do. So even when you're doing all of that stuff, like you're making an impression on somebody.
Right.
So I think sometimes there's people who don't acknowledge that within the role, and they only act a certain way when they think someone important is there or when it's the interview process. But like you are always showing people what your capabilities are, and you were very good at that. You were very good at making, I mean, I wasn't in your workplace, but just from conversations with a lot of your employees, the way that you keep close with them as well, you were really good at being a manager. You made people feel seen, you made people feel heard, and you also showed them, like, this is a job that I can do. You're coming from a place of experience, you know? You weren't some person who's in, like, an ivory tower, standoffish from everybody else. So I'm really glad that you taught me that lesson, and I think you taught all of them that lesson, and then that obviously benefited your career in the long run.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I was able to slide over to the other position, which was great because I really loved it. Like I found this different kind of passion. So, you know, again, like I said before, I feel like, you know, first and foremost, I'm a nurse, I'm a caregiver. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I worked on the floors and I had a certain number of patients that I cared for. And then I worked in the clinic and my audience was larger, right? My patient population was larger because I had the decisions I made affected 30,000 encounters in 1 year. Mm-hmm. And then I moved into informatics, and the role that I had in informatics, I was responsible for the workflow and coming up with best practices for all of the clinics. Mm-hmm. And so I had to use all of that experience that I had to, when we were implementing the medical record system with other clinics, I understood their pain. And, you know, one of the things that you always hear is like, you don't understand, this is so hard. And I would say, I do. I do. You know, in a previous life, I was a nurse manager. Yeah. And we had to convert to electronic medical records, and this is how we did it. And your audience is much more open to it when you are relatable, when you can relate to their experience. And so that helped me a lot. Yeah. But the thing that was different about the organization that I was in was that even though I was an informaticist, I also was a builder. Okay. Which is the person who goes in and actually creates the system that the end users will see or the patients will see. Okay. So I did that at that system, and I learned a lot, and I had a lot of responsibility, and I was able to take that experience and move to a new organization, which is my current organization. Mm-hmm. And I am not an informaticist, but the way that this organization works, I learned a lot more because even though I was using the same application, they have a lot more responsibilities. And when I was doing that, then I felt like my nursing was affecting like how many thousands of patients that go to the clinics. And, you know, if I'm making the doctors and the nurses' workflow make more sense and more efficient so that nothing is missed for the patients, then I am touching more patients with my nursing. Yeah. And now the application that I'm working on is directly related to patients, and it makes me really proud to do that. But one of the highlights was that we just implemented our application in Spanish. So our Spanish-speaking patients can have the same experience on their healthcare portals on their phone. Our native English-speaking patients do.
What a full circle moment huge. Of bringing the language back together.
Absolutely. So it made me super proud to do it. And we're still working on it, but it is, it's definitely a highlight for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Oh, and I was able to speak. We have a patient-focused technology council that's Spanish-speaking, and I gave them the presentation in Spanish, which was dope. Yeah. It was nerve-wracking, but I loved it. They were really appreciative, too.
Did you think you would use so much Spanish in your nursing career?
No.
No. But here you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I find interesting is I knew a lot of friends and people who wanted to go to school for nursing, and they were going and getting their bachelor's. I have friends at this point who some have gotten their master's in different areas of nursing. You went to 2-year and got your associates. Is that really the case nowadays that people can do that, or do they have to get the bachelor's? Because you also came up against some things while you were nursing where they wanted you to go back to school to get a
Right.
bachelor's, right? So what's
Yeah.
that like right now? What's the state of the education degree level when it comes to the nursing field?
Yeah, so there's I don't know if there's still diploma programs, but there used to be programs where you could get your nursing license with just a diploma from a like a hospital system might have nursing
Mm.
school. You can still get your associate degree and get your nursing, but you're going to be limited with some things. Like I cannot get certain certifications because you have to have at least a bachelor's degree to get a certification.
Right.
And that's trying to raise the excellence of nursing because nursing is perceived as just a technical kind of a program. And in a sense, I get it. I think that I've experienced it myself where people just think that, if you're a nurse, you're just, doing very menial things. They don't understand all of the knowledge and skill that comes in. When you're in the hospital, the doctor sees you for 10 minutes, but the nurse is there for you for 8 to 12 hours. And the nurse is going to know more about what's going on with you on a moment-to-moment basis than the doctor will. And the nurse is going to be the one that has to step in if something happens. So I understand trying to raise the nursing excellence. When I was a manager at the clinic, at a certain point, they were trying to obtain magnet status for the hospital. And for magnet status, a certain percentage of your nursing managers, I can't remember if it was 100% or if it was something lower, needed to have at least a bachelor's degree in nursing. So they were telling us that if we did not have a bachelor's degree in nursing, that we were going to have to go back to school to get our bachelor's degrees.
Were they going to pay for it?
No, they were not going to pay for it, and you were not going to get a raise for going back to school.
That's insane.
So I told my director, when that rule takes effect, let me know because I'm going to look for another job.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am not going to go to school, pay out of pocket, take out loans to do the exact same job that you deemed me worthy of today.
Right.
And you're not going to pay me more for it. That's ridiculous. So that didn't make any sense for me. Plus, I had a coworker who had a bachelor's degree in science, just not a bachelor's degree in science of nursing.
Okay. And
they were going to make her go back to school.
Mm.
And I just thought this was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to do it. But that just, at that point, just showed, I really had no desire to move up in the nursing career ladder.
Yeah. It wasn't that you didn't want to learn more, because you've always been open to learning. It's that you didn't want to go into this thing that just didn't make more sense for you. Because when the opportunity came to do learning within the tech part of it, you jumped on it.
Yes. I did not want to follow the nursing career ladder.
Yeah,
which
that
is,
makes sense.
You go from nursing manager, you become a director, maybe you become a vice president, a CNO,
right. And you don't want to do all that.
That wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I liked being a manager. I know I was a good manager.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to feel challenged and I have to feel like I'm learning.
Yeah.
And so I have obtained I'm looking at it, 7 certifications since I switched over to this field. Mm-hmm. And I obtained 3 of them I obtained last year. Wow. So I am always learning. I'm always trying to gather more knowledge, whatever it may be. I'm also a person who digs deep. So it's not necessarily like technical kind of stuff. Like I'll talk to somebody and they'll tell me my person has been diagnosed with so and so, and I do a deep dive trying to figure it all out. Like that's just me. I'm always absorbed. So it's not just about like what my career thing is. I'm always trying to learn no matter what it is. I want to stay informed. I want to be on top of things. And
that's been you in the family. Like you're a nurse, but you've been the family doctor. Like everybody comes to you whenever someone's got a bumper. You're not a doctor, but you're the family. Like you are the family expert or the first path before someone is going to actually go in to see a medical professional, right? Yeah. And because you're the person who likes to take that deep dive and wants to know. I always feel very safe coming to you for things. I always trust your opinion. Have not led me astray yet. Knock on wood. Well, I mean, your journey and your path are really beautiful and something that a lot of folks can learn from. I also think it's interesting that you bring up the point of like raising the standard of excellence within nursing, because I haven't heard people have the conversation like that. Like the conversation about education almost always comes to this binary of like whether you need it or not whether or not there's some sort of benefit within it, right? Like, and so to
Yeah.
say that there is a benefit if you take more classes and that's going to raise your standard of care, that's powerful to say, but it also is important what you're saying. Like, you've gotten on the job experience and your path led you to have this experience of understanding patients, but now you take what you've learned and what you did and you applied it in a different direction.
Yeah, I do want to say about the nursing excellence, though, that I think that part of the issue that we have with nursing is that one of the things that they told me when I was in nursing school was that nursing is the only profession that eats their young. I did find that my own experience, that experienced nurses can tend to feel threatened by newer nurses and are not as open. So when I was at the clinic, I had nursing students and I made it a very nursing student friendly environment that I actually had a waiting list of candidates trying to get in to do their training at my clinic. But the other part about the raising the nursing excellence is that in trying to raise the nursing excellence, there has to be a way to pull in the nurses that are already there that have been working all of these years that do not have that, the bachelor's degree, and grandfather them in some way. And the feeling that I had, and I haven't followed it that closely lately, so I'm not sure if things have changed, but the feeling that I had was that instead of grandfathering us in, they were trying to push us out or force us to move up. And so I feel that in itself is a challenge because you're going to lose more and more people if you keep doing this kind of thing. You got to figure out a way to elevate the profession without alienating the people that are currently in it.
Yeah, because you're going to lose a lot of generational knowledge like that too, and experience. You ready to get into some Q&A?
Yes, I can't believe that people actually sent in questions, but...
Yeah. Well, I think part of this is like when I talk about what I talk about just in social media and in the world with our relationship is like, you are obviously my mother, but you are very much, like, remember I brought up the quote from This Is Us, you're very much my friend, and and you're also a mentor to me. And so our relationship, I didn't know this until obviously becoming more of an adult, that I was like, wow, our relationship is different than a lot of other people's. We're very fortunate to have such a good, close relationship. And so people have questions about that, right? Like, you're a teen mom for all intents and purposes. Like, most folks were not successful in that journey or as successful as you. And so this is a very big deal, right? I get, and this question is it's really heady and big, but I thought it was a good one. What has been your biggest life lesson?
Ooh,
it's hard to pick one, right? Right?
Yeah. I would say that my biggest life lesson has been to not believe everything that has been shoved down my throat.
Ooh, say more.
Do you know, growing up, that I felt like speaking Spanish was a bad thing. I felt like my curly hair was a bad thing. My color, I experienced colorism in my family. And that my height, the fact that I had a baby at a young age, all of these things, like people telling me you're never going to do anything. You ruined your whole life because you had a baby at that age, or, you're never going to amount to anything, or people are not going to like you. Like, I always felt like I had to, and this is something that I held true for the longest time. Whenever I would go on an interview, I would not wear my hair in its natural state. I always had my hair in a French braid because I didn't want my curliness to show. And I would never wear, these big old hoop earrings because I didn't want any of that to show, because I felt like it was going to be held against me. Yeah. And so the world has told me that I was other and tried to shove down my throat that I had a baby at a young age and therefore I could not do anything. They told me that I got together with somebody young and that it was never going to work out, that, you're from the inner city in Chicago and you're going to stay there, that kind of thing. And that being Latina meant that I was not as good and I had to be quiet in certain places and not be seen in others. And I don't believe any of that, but it took me a long time to get there. My life journey has taken me to 3 states, 4 cities. I've graduated from college. I've raised 2 wonderful, talented children. My husband and I are still together, you know, and I wear my Latinidad like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
I belong, and I am me.
Yeah.
100%.
I'd say I don't know if I don't even know if I can find the right terms for it, but a life lesson you've given me is just the confidence. I remember going to college and so many other people were like putting on all these pounds of makeup so that they could feel confident going out. And in our household, we just left the house like even right now. I mean, I'm not wearing any makeup when we're doing this on camera. That was a huge one, to speak up. You've always been outspoken, and so I know that I took that and was very outspoken as well. You taught me how to like edit and write. Like when I was in my own education journey and I was in school, I remember learning some of the strategies that teachers did, and it was stuff that you and I did together in the house, right? Like it was just mind-blowing to me that you've done these things. So I think that I've taken so much confidence from you. I've taken so much like self-assuredness, and I'm taking that with me. You know, that's been a big life lesson that you've taught me. So this next question is a really good one. It's from Jessica, and she said, "How did you instill drive in me?" She adds, "As we climb higher, she's afraid that her own kids won't have it. So like the more successful folks get, how do you make sure that your kids have that hustle and that energy?" So how did you build me to be so ambitious and crazy?
I feel that a lot of it was leading by example. If I said that I was going to do something, I would do it. And I'm not afraid to fail. And so if I interview for a job, I don't worry about it. Like if I don't get it, I don't get it. But the other thing too with you was that we always supported you, no matter what it was. You know, from when you were a kid and you were in soccer on Camp Pendleton. We were there at every game, at every practice. And at the time, remember, your dad was in Okinawa and I was basically single parenting, holding down a full-time job, dropping you off at school, dropping your sibling off at daycare, and still co-parent for the Girl Scouts and co-parent for your soccer team.
Yep.
No matter what it was that you wanted to do, we were supportive of you. You were playing volleyball, we were at your games. You were cheerleading, we were at your games. We were cheering on the cheerleaders. We didn't care about the football game.
Yep.
The other thing too is that if I felt that you were heading off in the wrong direction,
you checked me.
Yeah, I didn't worry about whether you were going to be mad at me or not.
Right.
I told you something.
Yeah.
And you know, we've always had a good relationship, but there were some years there where our relationship was strained because I wasn't ready to let you totally grow up, and you were not ready to look at me in the way of like somebody who has experience that has something to offer.
I remember, I think that time between high school, probably my sophomore year in high school and most of college was like the most difficult because I was ready to be an adult and you were like, no, you're not.
Yeah,
you're absolutely not. There was a lot of headbutting there. Yeah,
there was a lot of headbutting. But for me, specifically, I feel that is what has helped you because we were supportive, but we also, you know, hey, your head's getting too big, you need to step down a little bit.
Right.
Like even when you had what I thought were cockamamie ideas. Okay, I supported you.
You did.
You wanted to start off the brand with the t-shirt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start.
Yeah.
You know? Even kept it up while you were away at school. I did all of the orders. I did the vending. I did all of that stuff. So supported you on that. But when you said, I'm not happy with school right here, I'm going to apply to Harvard, I was like, go ahead, sweetie.
Right?
You know?
And you were like the only person that I told because I was like, people are going to look at me like I'm insane.
Yeah.
But you helped me.
Yeah, I helped you. I didn't say, oh, this kid, she's just wasting her money. I didn't say that. I supported you. No matter, even if I didn't think that it was something that made sense. But here's the thing. It was not you that I didn't have faith in. Right. I knew that you could do it. It was the system. Yeah. And I, growing up, would never have had the audacity to dream that my child would be able to go to an Ivy League university. They had you like a year out of high school. Yeah. You know? So it was not you.
I knew that it was about what the goal was, but I think a perfect example of that is the fact that you were like, okay, yeah, go apply at Harvard, whatever. You know, you're fine because you also at that time I already had my bachelor's, I had teaching experience, I was in class at Cal State LA, so you were like, okay, But then I remember when I had that like breakdown because my last letter of recommendation hadn't come in yet. My essays are crap. I was like freaking out about this application. And you just were like, no, you need to relax, go take a shower. When you get out, I'll help you go over this essay. And you calmed me down so much that like a person who didn't believe in me wouldn't have done that, right? So you always believed in me. And I think part of what you're talking about and what you've said that you did over time is like the way that it affected me is that I've kind of internalized it into this version that I'm not afraid to fail, because I've said so many times, like, I know that I won't be homeless and I know that I won't be hungry. I have so many places that I can go and rest my head, and I have so many places where I can go for a meal. So no matter what it is that I'm doing, I'm going to have those two safety nets. And it's allowed me the freedom to explore and learn and make mistakes and try new things. And, you know, even when I was younger, like, I wanted to sell candy down the block, and you were like, okay, but you can only go up to this person's house. So it wasn't like you told me no. You gave me a safety set of parameters to instill those things into me, and you encouraged me to be who I am. You know, I'm very appreciative of that. I'm grateful. Well, and this kind of falls into the last question. What advice would you give to other mothers on how to build healthy relationships with their adult children? That's a big one.
That is a hard one.
Yeah.
It is a hard one because I've gotten better, but part of it is letting go. I remember somebody told me this before when I was just so stressed out, and they said, you know what, you just gotta let go and let God. Mm-hmm. And
stressed out about me?
Not about you in general, but about how the world is going to treat you. So as a mom, my biggest challenge is knowing that I cannot protect you from everything.
Yeah.
I can't. I want to. You know, I remember you've told me stories about things that people have done or said, and I just want to go choke somebody.
Yeah.
You know, because I want to protect you. And so part of wanting to protect you is when I think you're making a decision that I don't agree with, that I want to tell you, no, don't do that. You should do this. You should do that. And I'm not just talking about you. I'm talking about you and your sibling. That's how I am.
Yeah.
I mean, that's as a mother what I would want to do. But what I have learned to do is to step back and let you tell me, because there is so much of me in you. Yeah. That so many times we are saying the same thing. We are just using different words.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I've done is that, like, instead of telling you, hey, you should do this, I can have a conversation with you where it's like maybe a gentle nudging. And with that gentle nudging, that you can see my perspective and see where I'm coming from. The perfect example is the ending of the Educated Latina line. This is your product, right? This was your baby, your idea. I have a huge emotional and sweat equity investment in this business, but it is your baby. And when you decided that you were going to end it, I gave you my opinion. There are a lot of people who feel the way that I do about this, and we have to figure out a way to not make them feel bad for supporting it in the first place, you know. Right. But you already had that in mind. Yeah. So I didn't need to tell you. When you said that, I could have taken it and said, well, you need to make sure that you are talking to people and blah, 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 blah. It was having a conversation with you, and then you saying, and of course, I don't want the people. Exactly. And then when you said that I said, yeah, because like when I still want to wear the shirt. And you said, I'm wearing it right now. Yeah. So, that's the kind of thing. So that's one. The second thing that I did that I've always done is that I have taken the time to spend time alone with each of my kids. Yeah. Throughout their lives. And you and your sibling are so different that it's actually easy for me because I can do different things with each one of you. Yeah. But I've done that always with you. I've taken trips alone with you. Yeah. I've done a lot of things alone with your sibling so that we have our own relationships outside of the family dynamic. Yeah. Then when we're all together, we have that because we all know that you come to my house and you forget that you're an adult. Yeah. Well, yes. And I fit into my role. I know the role I play. And that's fine. But then when you and I are having phone conversations, it's very much on an adult level.
Yeah.
And I let you be an adult. And I think that that's the biggest thing is that I let you be an adult. And then when you need a mom, I'm a mom.
You're a very good mom. I'm very lucky. That's a lucky thing. One thing we didn't talk about, and I want to address, because I think this is like such a big part of your story, our story, is the fact that you've talked about this, you've been very open, and you told me you'd be open to talk about it, is the fact that you did obviously consider having an abortion, I guess, yeah. Right? We didn't go too deep into that, but I was thinking about it because I guess at a certain point growing up, I felt like I might have burdened you being a baby that was born to a teen mom and made your life harder. But then when you kind of shared this story, I felt chosen still. And I felt loved. I felt loved the whole time. But like, I felt very much chosen. And so I wanted to give you a chance to kind of tell that story and how being able to make that choice affected you and ultimately our relationship.
So I think it's very timely considering that abortion is under attack in this country right now, which I can't believe we're having this discussion in 2022. But here we are.
Right.
So when I got pregnant with you, here's one of the things where you get a lot of pressure from being the oldest and the one that the family has made the sacrifices for to kind of elevate the family. And so, like I said before, my father worked a second shift for 4 years to pay for my tuition. And then I got pregnant shortly after graduating from high school. That man did not talk to me until you were born.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him.
You wouldn't know it either because he's the most loving, amazing, wonderful grandfather.
Yeah.
And I think I blessed his life.
He was so hurt. Yeah. Absolutely 100% hurt by what I did. And I get it. I was 17 when I got pregnant, and your dad was 16. I was robbing the cradle. And
gross. Kids are sick.
And I had just graduated from high school, and the first thing that we decided to do was to have an abortion. We went so far as to schedule the appointment, and your dad this was before ATM, so your dad went to the bank and took out the money from his bank account to pay for it. But I was torn, even at the time that I was doing this, and it was not, don't get me wrong, it was not because of, because I went to a Catholic school, or it's against God, or it's against, I was not thinking about any of that at all. All I was thinking about was, in typical 17-year-old fashion, was me. Okay? So nothing else played into that. I didn't think about my parents. I didn't think about your dad. I thought about me.
Right.
And I was not that far in my pregnancy when I found out that I was pregnant. But I just had this feeling that I wanted to keep the baby. Everything in my world was telling me not to. My age, the fact that I was gonna be starting school at UIC, my parents, this bright future that I had. And, there weren't really a lot of people in my world that had babies when they were teenagers and went on to have huge successful careers. I'm not saying that it didn't happen. There may be people in my world that I just wasn't very aware of because I was young and only paying attention to myself.
Yeah.
But I decided that I wanted to have a baby. I did not talk to your dad about it. I just made that decision.
Yeah.
From the moment that I decided that I wanted to have you, I was a mom. But I made that decision. And abortion was offered to me even after I disclosed to people in my life that I was pregnant. So nobody forced me and said, I wasn't making this decision behind my back, behind anybody's back.
Right.
There was no discussion about, you have to get married. There was no discussion about you're keeping it if you got pregnant, like that kind of thing. Nothing like that. I made this decision by myself, and that was that. But at that moment, I knew I was a mom, and that's what I was going to do. So when I had you, and it was really hard when you were a baby, I wanted to always have you. So I always did a lot of things with you. I would read to you every night. And then I wanted you to learn how to read. And so I would read one page and have you read the other page and then help you with the words. And then, like that kind of thing. And then we would do stories and create stories and all of that. But every time that we did that, and then we had our bedtime ritual where I would sing to you, "You are my sunshine." And then, we made up our own little ending.
Yeah.
And that's why to this day, you're my sunshine. I always call you my sunshine.
And now people know the reason behind the photo booth name.
Exactly. So all of that was going on. But the thing was that as I did all of that with you, we bonded. There was a stronger bond. Every single night that I kissed you goodnight and put you to bed and read to you and sang our song, it was that. And so through when we would have our hard times, there was always still that bond. But I feel for me, that the fact that I made the choice to keep you, that I had the choice of whether or not I wanted to go forward and become a mother, allowed me the space to become the best mother I could possibly be.
Right. Even with all those obstacles around, because you were uneducated at the time. You were a low-income mama. You had a lot of struggles, and you still were a really fantastic mother.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And don't forget that.
Thank you.
When I would go places with you, there was always the looks too, because I looked younger than I was. So I was young.
Yeah.
So I'm 18 years old pushing a stroller, but I looked like I was 15.
Yeah.
And I'm pushing a stroller, so I had all of that going against me. But I wanted to do what was best for you. And so when I decided that I was going to be a mother, and your grandmother was like, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I did not know how things were going to be with your dad. Like I said, we're still together to this day, but we were young. There were many obstacles, many hurdles that we have had to overcome in order to get to the place that we're at today. My goal was to get a career that I knew that no matter what, I could take care of you. Period. End of story. It didn't matter about anything else. Yeah. And if I became a nurse, you would always have a roof over your head and you would always have food at the table. You may not see me that often because I had to work. But at the end of the day, what I was hoping was that you would appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I do feel that's what it came around that way anyway, because we had those years where we had the struggles. But I remember you as an adult one day going through something. I can't remember what it was. And you found a receipt for something that had to do with your quinceañera. And you said, "Thank you so much. I did not realize how much money you spent on this. This was a huge sacrifice." And, in case you forgot, I worked the extra job.
You worked I knew that. Yeah. I knew you worked the extra job.
And then the first time that you tried to plan a vacation on your own.
Oh my God. When I looked at Disney tickets, I was like, forget it. You guys are crazy.
Yeah. But going back to the original thing, I believe that choice makes a huge difference in there are many women who want to have a baby and can't. And they have no choice, right? For whatever reason, they're biologically incapable, or many people, I should say, that want to have babies and then they can't. But then there are people who can and choose not to. And that can make a huge difference in being forced to do it.
Right.
I'm not saying that every person who's forced to have a baby is a bad parent, because obviously abortion wasn't legal before 1974. But for me, it helped me to be able to realize the capacity that I had in me to be a good parent. Yeah. So I believe that it also goes full circle to the issues that are going on in this country right now with the misogyny. Yeah. And the hatred of women that we've seen recently in national headlines and stuff. It's just all Handmaid's Tale kind of thing. Yes. Very, very scary. Yeah. But for me, I am very grateful to have been given the choice to go forward with the pregnancy and to have you and to have created such a wonderful human that has touched so many lives. Thanks. That, I think about that sometimes. I really think about the fact that you have touched so many lives, and it's all because I made a choice. Yeah. That worked for me.
I think that's why I like the show This Is Us so much, because the way that they show it not only is like the dynamic of the family, but also the way that people's actions can so positively impact other people. Like there was the one episode where you're like, what is this random couple, like the Indian dude and the Argentinian woman, and it turns out the dude was the person who invented the software for us for video chatting and things like that. FaceTime, yeah. And I'm like, wow, those things really make a difference. Like, my friend Linda was on last week, and I was talking about how the conversations I have with her have literally impacted my wallet because I make more money because of those conversations, right? And then from that, other people, because I'm so vocal about it, other people have asked me, and I've heard from multiple people that me sharing those things online have encouraged them to then make more money. It's not just about money, but it's like about being kind. It's about the choices. There's a woman who used to do, on Fridays, she would be like, send money to someone for coffee. She would encourage that online. Do you know how many other people were then spreading that love and positively impacting? And it's because of those choices. And I do go back to that, knowing that you made that choice with me, and it makes me feel loved and chosen. That's really what I come down to. And it doesn't mean that other people are not loved and chosen. This is just our story and the way that it's impacted us in our relationship. So I'm grateful for that. Well, thank you, Mama. Yeah, even those silly writing things that we used to do, the fact that I became a reading and writing teacher. Like me watching you read V.C. Andrews, or me wanting to read Stephen King and you blacking out certain parts that you didn't think were appropriate for me yet. And you were editing my books.
Yeah, I mean, you were like 8 years old, and some Stephen King stuff has some, gratuitous sexual verbiage. I'm like, I'm all for reading, but I don't think that you need to read NC-17.
No, you're absolutely right. But that was a really good way, and this was like a strategy that I used with my kids too. That was a really good way to get me to want to continue to read, because I couldn't wait to grow up so I could read those crazy things, And they say that, like, if you have a book and the main character is in high school, the middle school kids want to read it. So because it's this excitement, like, ooh, it's something that's like next level. I can't read, so you didn't even know that.
I didn't know that, but that makes sense why so many women love Twilight, because it was like women of my generation, and we're at the age where you start thinking about your mortality, and they were immortal, and so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? That's the human element of it. Yeah. Well, I think that this is it. Is there anything else that you want to share, that you want the world to know about you?
I think that's about it. I'm really honored that you wanted to do this, and honored that people took the time to submit questions. And if anybody wants to ask me anything personal, or they could on social media, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with sharing my journey, or if there's any specific questions or something that somebody wants to clarify on.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I was going to mention earlier when you talked about leaving management is that I think from there you became a fantastic mentor to other people too. You weren't just doing your day job and like zoning in. You talked about how you were even giving people in the job like information about their benefits and their sick days or whatever. You're doing things like that. Right.
I still do that. And it's so funny because at this organization, I'm not management at all, but when somebody has a question, they know that I'll dig deep and find it, and so they keep on reaching out to me for it. So
you're a fantastic resource. So, if folks are looking for someone to come to about things like that, about the nursing career or being a teen mom or anything like that, I think that you're an amazing person to go to. I'm very grateful for every bit of information that you've given me. I'm going to share all your socials as well. And just thank you, Mom. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Of course, sweetie. I love you.
I love you too.